Welcome to Season 7 of the Retail Tea Break podcast. My name is Melissa Moore, the Retail Advisor and Rethink Retail Top Retail Expert for 2024. Each week, I'll be joined by industry experts, retailers and brands to dispel the myths, share knowledge, and give you an insight into the retail industry. Listen back to previous episodes on your favourite podcast platform or, of course, on YouTube. And while you're there, please do subscribe to the podcast so that you get to listen first every single week. So in the meantime, grab that cup of tea, sit back and listen in to Season 7 of the Retail Tea Break podcast. Today, I'm joined by a guest who plays a huge part in a modern heritage Irish brand that sells across the globe. Establishing themselves as a leader in fashionable, functional and sustainable clothing was and still is a family passion. Now, in business over 70 years and in its third generation, the legacy brand uses meticulous craftsmanship. From the original focus on corsetry to their pivot to outerwear, the brand continues to strive for innovation while respecting their heritage. And so their core focus remains the same: timeless elegance crafted with an eye for detail. Sarah Murphy, Managing Director of Jack Murphy, welcome to the Retail Tea Break podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited. We've obviously spoken before, and I'm going to say right now at the beginning of this episode, big fan in this house of the brand. We own plenty of outerwear living here in the west of Ireland. It's much needed. So I'm thrilled to be talking about a brand that I love very, very dearly. But look, before we kick off, in the age-old tradition of the Retail Tea Break podcast, in the time that it takes to boil a kettle, which I am told is about 2 minutes, tell us a bit more about you and the business.
Yeah, it's always hard, those ones, just where to start, you know. So I'm Sarah Murphy and Jack was my granddad, and he actually started in corsetry. He worked at a manufacturer in Dublin and learned the I suppose the trade, and learned how to kind of start to finish, was manager. And when he went out on his own, he set up his own corsetry business, which was lingerie and corsetry, and my dad joined him. And you know, it did very well actually in Ireland. And then as my dad kind of got into it more and more, he took it to outerwear and made Jack Murphy into what it is today. We wouldn't have what we have without his skills and expertise. He's very much design and production and management of all that piece. And I joined in 2018, and before that I was living my best life doing ski seasons and
I love this because you come to kind of retail in that respect with no retail experience, which is
no.
incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a very steep learning curve, but you know, I've been really lucky. There's a lot of people in our industry that are really, really helpful and really warm, and they want you to succeed and they want to work with you. And I've had great advice and great conversations with people across the whole retail spectrum, even with competitors. I mean, I didn't really realize that's what it would be like until I joined. And yeah, it's you know, we've had our ups and downs, and I'm sure we'll get into a little bit of that later on, but it has been actually really, really interesting and enjoyable and exciting to kind of learn the whole industry, I suppose. But before that, I worked in a lot of customer facing roles, so I wasn't completely green in that area, so that was good.
And I think that's probably the most important thing. You know, on many episodes, we've talked about the customer being so important to the business. Doesn't matter what the brand is, doesn't matter the brand values. And as you say, you're so used to working with customers and listening to them and having that emotional connection that I'm sure that's played a really important role in what you currently do.
Yeah, and I think as well for me, growing up, even, you know, when I was in my teens, like clothing was a really big part of your identity and how you express yourself. And I still feel that it is. And I think that's the really personable part of what we do. So really getting to know people and getting to know their brand as a retailer and who their customer is. And, you know, each individual has what they want from their clothes. And I think that's really important to understand. So it's not just, you know, making a jacket. It's
No,
more than
absolutely. And it is more than that. And like that, good clothing means a lot to people. And certainly the pieces you make, then it's not fast fashion, and we'll definitely come to that. But these are pieces that sit in the wardrobe that are worn time and time again, that mean something, that are there for occasions, and I absolutely love that. And on that, then I suppose you are a legacy. And I want to say fashion and kind of almost like inverted commas here. You are a
Yeah.
legacy fashion brand. It's and that in itself is almost a play on the ideas. You're keeping the old, as they've said, with the legacy. You're bringing in the new because, again, you're updating season on season. But how on earth then, especially in today's climate, how do you stay so current?
I don't know the exact answer to that. But no, there's one thing that we try and do, and it is something that has always been part of our values. And even looking back on what my granddad Jack did, it's it's a bit of a line, but I really like it. It's that we aim to create beautiful but purposeful clothing that's made to last. And I think that's really important because it's all elements of that. So, you spoke about wearing Jack Murphy when you're out in the wet. Like that's the functional element, but you still want to look good. You don't have to not look good because you're in a rain jacket. I think that's a really important part of what we do. And, keeping it tailored, but also paying attention to what it actually is being used for. And then the last piece is making it last. It to me, clothing, there are elements of clothing that do wear, and that makes sense. But if you can have a piece that's going to last you a long time, then you can make it part of your wardrobe and make it part of how you express yourself through clothing, I suppose.
And I think absolutely Jack Murphy clothing fits all of those things so well, as again, bringing it back to exactly what I own. They do work, they are functional. But you do wanna look good because actually it's not even about the looking, it's the feeling good.
Yeah.
Even on those rotten, awful days where it's absolutely lashing down, it's nice to put something on that fits well, that's comfortable, that you know is gonna keep you dry, especially
Yeah.
if it is your kind of outer wet wear that you have. And it also brings me kind of to those incredible, and if you haven't seen these images that I know you produce year on year, really amazing, moody images, outside that really lend so well to your pieces that I presume you produce kind of year on year, season on season that are everywhere, but they just instill such kind of emotion because you're bringing the weather into an awful lot. We do the weather, the outside, there's all these different elements. And yet at the heart of that are these incredible pieces that you talk about.
Yeah, I mean, this season we're about to launch Autumn Winter 24, so nobody's seen the location shoot for
Ooh.
that. So we've got like dogs and horses, and we're out in the west, out by Linan and Westport, and it's kind of a really big part of how we express what our collection is. And it was one of the big things for me when I joined. I was really it was really clear to me what the product could be and how it could be shown, but to take it and sometimes a jacket would take 18 months to 2 years to really get to the final product as to what it's going to look like and what it's going to be. And I believe that you should give it that same time and effort and dedication after it's been made. So give it that space to sort of shine and showcase it. And we've a really excellent team that we work with, excellent photographers, stylists, models, everybody who's there, the team in the office, Rob and Barbara, they come to everything. And even like my dad, like we're on the shoot together and he'll see something and I'll see something, and it's about really expressing the brand and showing what you can do with it. So kind of giving like inspiration and ideas, and then I suppose as a whole giving the brand image. So yeah, it is moody. I'm trying to get more smiley photos sometimes.
No, but I look moody in the right way. Do you know what I mean? They're incredibly expressive, but I also think it sets Ireland in the most beautiful view, alongside the fact you do absolutely 100% focus on the fashion that's in the images. So it's stunning. And I have to say, I do love looking at those because it makes you kind of just want everything, which is exactly what you want to do for customers.
Yes.
So you're absolutely getting it right there. And in that respect, I suppose you obviously sell direct to consumer on your website. But the retailer is, and you're in some of the biggest and best retailers across the country there.
Yeah.
How important as a supplier, I suppose, into those retailers, is to have these strong juggernauts of retail backing you, believing in you and in the brand, supporting you and what you do. That must be really important to a brand like Jack Murphy.
Massively, like really, really big, really, really important. I mean, one of the things that we're very aware of is that yes, we know our brand, we know our customer, but the retailer is closer to the customer. They're getting the feedback. They know what works in the market. They know how to, I don't have a window display or a shop to run. They've got a full spectrum that we don't do, and we've got to listen to what they need and they want. And we actually do a lot of work in terms of going into the retailers and meeting them and doing training and meeting the people that are on the floor that are meeting the customers, meeting the team. And I mean, it sounds so basic, but it's actually really, really important because it gives them a sense of who we are and what they're selling. And then they can actually understand the product better. And, I mean, it's actually really nice. It's really exciting. You get really, really interesting points of view. And, I mean, for me, the retailers are a really, really, really big part of our business. Like e-commerce is excellent and we've done really, really well on it, but it's still just under 20% of our business, so the retail customers are massive. And like, I mean, this year we were very, very excited that we're able to announce that we're in Adair boutique in Adair Manor. So,
Stunning.
it's amazing. But like Aaron Sweater Market, Kilkenny Design, Foxford Woolen Mills, they're all just really, really top of their game as to what they're doing. And I have massive respect for what they do.
And it's
Element.
interesting that you use that word respect, because I think the very fact that you're willing to spend the time, go and meet the team, train the team is hugely respectful. And a lot of our brands don't do it anymore because they'll send a video in or they'll send you to a link on a website. But actually, you interacting with those teams that are selling your stock enables them to tell the story. And I do think there's an awful lot of brands right now that seem to forget that. If you can't tell the people selling your stock your story in your words, they'll just fluff it. And you know what?
Yeah,
They'll fluff it, they'll get it wrong. It's not necessarily that they'll make stuff up, but they'll get that detail and they'll get that essence wrong. It'll disappear. Whereas I think the more time kind of brands and suppliers spend with the people on the ground, the more likelihood that they are to lap up every inch of inspiration, but also your love for the brand, because nobody loves a brand the way you would your own.
yeah. And I think as well, like, retail's really personable,
Mhm.
so sending a video, yeah, like it works for a certain amount, but I think being personable on the other end, so they're getting that space is really, and then you get really interesting questions and the kind of questions that you never really realized people needed to know. That's something that I found really interesting. Yeah.
That's really good then, that's then almost closing the loop. So
Yeah,
you're then going back to think about, well, actually, why is the customer asking that? How can we, I presume, then communicate that out or feed that information back into the system in some respects?
exactly, exactly. Do like if somebody's getting the same question or they're getting a question and they don't know how to answer it properly, and it's a simple thing for me, but I didn't know that that's something that was missing. It's I mean, it's a game changer. It really does massively help in sales and everything. So that's the bottom line.
Isn't it just? But also, I think it shows the evolution and the constant movement forward of the brand, because you're willing to listen, you're willing to maybe make changes if changes need to be made, but also give that feedback and answer those questions back, which again, as you said, is going to drive more people to try to buy more of the product more of the time, which is amazing. And it's definitely what we're here about. Something else that I wanted to talk to you about, because legacy brand, we know you use incredibly well sourced and great materials. It's about the functional, sustainable clothing.
Mm.
Sustainability in that respect does seem incredibly important. And I grabbed this line off your website. It says, we don't just talk sustainability, we live it. And I think a lot of brands are saying that right now, but
Mm.
you're definitely not one that talks the talk. You really are living it. It's really impacted, it seems, so many of your values, but also your day to day. It's in everything that you do.
Yeah, I mean, when I joined, it was something that I was quite passionate about. And then My brother has joined in the last year. He's very passionate about it as well. And it's really interesting working with dad because it's something that he's nearly always done. And we didn't even
And
realize.
isn't that interesting? Because I think an
Yeah.
awful lot of people still think, oh, it's been trendy in the lot. No, it's definitely not a
Yeah.
trend anymore. It's a movement. But people think this is new, and it's
No.
not.
No, like one of the first things Jack Murphy in its infancy, and it was an outerwear business moving into outerwear, was dad sourced army surplus jackets. And basically you buy them in and then he had to go through every single one of them, make sure it was up to scratch, fix them, mend them, and then sell them on from there. So like it's essentially vintage reselling. But that's where that's something that has always been part of what we do. And I think it's across the board. I mean, we're by no means perfect, and it's a constant moving, continuous journey, I suppose. But like, our collections, our ranges, we don't massively change our range season to season. We might add a new color. I think we've got 2 new styles this year, but that might come as a shock because we just present them in slightly different ways or have a slightly different color in a different. So it feels really new and fresh, but actually what you're getting is a commitment to continuing with a style for, some of our styles might be in the range for 5 years. Some of our styles have been in the range for 25 years. That's really important to us. And that's kind of what the customer wants as well. There's no need to massively change into these huge, big collection changes every season when that's not what is necessary. But there's another thing that we did that I'd be very, very proud of, but it's also kind of part of the downtime, for us. We had when I joined, basically Brexit was coming around the corner and we had a big, big business in the UK. It was nearly 60% of our
Wow.
overall turnover, and we lost about 85% of it. All,
Overnight, I presume.
yeah, I mean, Brexit hadn't even happened, but retailers in the UK were really nervous about what was going to happen. And I mean, understandably, but because there was no information, nobody knew what was going to happen. So they just stopped buying from anybody outside of the UK. And we didn't have the manpower, the structure in place to manage that well. So we lost a huge amount of them. Now we're bringing some back, and there was some really, really loyal customers that didn't go, and we're really grateful for them. We've got a couple of beautiful stores that we work with in London, but it it was a big, big hit. And one of the things that we did at the time was we changed from, I know you'll know this, but not a lot of people understand in fashion or in any kind of clothing, it takes 6 months for a garment to be made because the fabric has to be made and then the garment has to be made and then it has to be shipped. No matter if it's coming from Europe or from the Far East, it still takes a long time for delivery, for logistics. And so a lot of brands will buy forward. So they'll buy their collection, they'll sell a certain amount of it in the forward orders, and then they'll try and sell it through over the
Mm.
season. And we basically stopped that altogether. So we have what we're calling make to order, but it's not your atelier style. So we literally only will make a garment if we've achieved 70% of the minimum order for production. So it
Wow.
means we don't have any waste product because we dealt with that. That's what we had, and we were sitting on stock and looking at it and going, what are we going to do here? So we changed that, and it's been really impressive how the retailers have got on board with it and been really dedicated to, we're quite strict about this is our cutoff date, and if you don't have your order in, unfortunately, we might not be able to fulfill your order, do you know?
It's incredibly brave, but actually, I say that with such joy because fair play to you for doing that. Obviously, it's come from an area of hardship, and we might talk
Mm,
about that in a sec, but it's an incredibly brave decision to say, get them in, or you're not getting any. And actually,
mm,
I think it speaks volumes that the retailers row in behind you, and they do that because, again, this sustainability journey that we are all now on
mhm.
is so much more important than it was a few years ago, that it's brilliant to see that even way down your logistics and your supply chain, that actually you're thinking about that so far in advance. And you know what? It's benefiting everyone at this stage. So it's incredible to do that and to see it working.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a lot of work.
I can imagine.
There's a lot of admin, and we work really closely with our suppliers. So like, our tweed fabrics, are 100% wool. We work with McGee, we work with Malloy, we work with Moons in Yorkshire. But like their lead times can be 12 weeks to 20 weeks if we don't get it in on time for them. You know, there's an awful lot of work that goes into making this happen. But it's really, really effective. And it means then that, you know, that the retailer at the end of the line can say to the customer, if you don't, this might be gone. And if it's gone, it actually is gone. There is no more left, you know, which is great. I mean, we're really proud of it, and we're really happy that we've been able to do it. And yeah, it was a really big decision, and it was difficult, and you know, you have to stick to your guns, but it got us through, and it made us really, really, I don't know, be proud of that value in what we do and stand up for it. And it like there was a lot of difficult conversations, but we got there.
And again, and it's working. And I think it's incredible that you have been so strong in taking that stance. But, you know, if it works for you, the retailers obviously want the goods because the customers are buying, and it's obviously working for everyone. But I'd love to come back a little bit, and we won't
Yeah,
delve too deep, but
yeah,
Brexit was, I almost think some of us have forgotten how awful those initial years were because COVID came so quickly then. It all kind of
yeah.
blended and melted into one. It was a real kick in the teeth, I suppose, that whole range of time span for the business, and incredibly challenging. And no doubt the business, like every business, has been through huge challenging times, you know, especially over the longevity of the business. But
Mm.
and I suppose I can only ask this now because I know you've come through the other side, but how good, bad, or ugly were those challenges during that time?
I will put it this way: I never ever want to live that ever again. It was awful. It was horrendous. It was really, really difficult. It, you know, we had to downsize. We had to outsource our warehousing. We went down to, you know, very, very minimal staff, very minimal team. You know, it, and then coupled with that, you were straight into COVID, where you couldn't get together and talk to each other and figure out what to do. You know, even with my parents, I was isolating from them. And I think it's been it now. I don't know if I'm glad it happened, but I feel that there has been massive learning in it. And you know, it has really shown us that we're able to manage it and manage out of it. We've put things in place so we don't ever get there again. And but you can't control what happens in the world, and you have to.
No, but I think having strategies and processes, or having been through the bad times, to think about, you know, how do we put, you know, things in place that it never happens again, must have been incredibly rewarding experience. And I mean that in the best possible way, because you know you're more prepared for what you can be prepared for, but also having been to hell almost, you know, you've bounced back. And that's what I love about this and why I asked, because you've bounced back stronger than ever. And I just think that's a real, you know, that's a real achievement for a brand like this. And have done it so quickly, might I add, that, you know, there's certainly all the positivity over the last few years is phenomenal. So you've done a full 360 in a matter of a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, we're also very much like, this is pretty good. But no, like, I mean, I think that there was a lot of time put into the Irish market. You know, we've got a
Yeah.
really, really great, strong trade here, and that's been really effective. Working together with Dad, there was a lot of challenges, but also we always knew we had each other's backs. And I might have said it before at a different time. One thing that I found was that even though we might argue or it might be really difficult, we always had the same goal for the brand and for the business. So it was always something about how we got there. It wasn't about what the end was
Mm.
or where we wanted to be, because it's not really the end, you know. And it's getting used to moving with it, and not, you know, not really getting too bogged down in the really small things, and looking at the bigger picture and being happy for the achievements that you made. And I think there was I have done a program called Going for Growth, which is for female entrepreneurs, and there's this part in it that I still struggle with. I think a lot of entrepreneurs do. But you talk about your goals, right? So you talk about your goals for 6 months. That's grand. You can write a list, you can do all these different things, and you have to strategize it and have time measurement and everything. But then you have to do 6 months of your achievements. So your previous achievements from the past 6 months, what were they? And name them and talk about them. And that's really big, because then you can actually say, oh wow, we've actually, we're here and we've done it. And I I honestly couldn't have done it without our team. Like they're incredible. And it's great to see that excitement and interest, and also like we've said already, that our retail partners, but everybody involved. Everybody's been we've been very, very lucky with the people that we work with. Yeah.
And I think that's, testament to the brand itself. People want to row in behind a really strong brand, as we said, Irish legacy brand, been around a long time. But at the end of the day, the clothing is good, because if it wasn't, you wouldn't get that support. And I think sometimes it does boil down to what you're making is beautiful. And as we've said, it's functional, it's fashionable, it's sustainable. And that all must come together, because you're expanding and exploding at a rate of knots, which is why this is such a good news story, because it looks like you're gonna go on forever and ever. And I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd hope we're able to have that. We want to grow sustainably as well. We're not interested in a really quick sale. We're interested in somebody, in a retailer that's going to work with us and build and grow. But yeah, I mean, it's what I find really fun is I see my younger cousins wearing the jackets now, and my friends, and there's people that they're wearing it, and I didn't really expect that.
Can we talk about Shania Twain
I
then? Because
know.
I'd say that was a shock and a delight to everyone to see that recently.
And did you see she put little rhinestone diamantes on it? It
Love
was
it.
so cool. Yeah, I mean, we were blown away. We didn't even know. Didn't know it was going to happen. Didn't know what anything. Literally saw it on Instagram, and we're just like, cannot believe this is happening. So yeah, it's pretty big.
I
It's
love this. Amazing. Well, look, final question then. What's coming up next? Goodness, I don't even know where you're going to go with this answer, but what's coming up next for you in the brand over the next few months?
I suppose we're really excited to launch Autumn Winter 24. We're doing our kind of slow and steady building it up, but I'm so excited about the imagery and the video and the content. It's just to show you guys what we can do. And we've got into we make these culottes, these tweed culottes, and we've got these kind of suiting looks now, which is really cool. And I mean, I know it's fabulous. It's like I've worn one. What I like about our brand, you're able to dress it up. So I've worn a full suit to an awards, and then I'll wear a tweed coat with a hoodie underneath it. Like that's kind of what we're pushing, is that expansion into not just what we would have presumed to be before. We're more than
Yeah, it's
that.
almost not so formal if you don't want it to be formal
Yeah,
anymore. I'm loving the idea of wearing the gear with a hoodie and a pair of trainers right now, because again,
yeah,
it shows how versatile that the collection has become as well.
yeah. So Autumn Winter 24. Very excited for the launch. There's some actually in store now. There's a lot going in store now, and you can obviously buy it online. And probably doing a lot of visits to our top customers. I'm actually heading out to Canada on Sunday for a big event in Spruce Meadows, which is like a Rolex venue over there, for an equestrian event. And then I think my big thing over the next year or so is to really try and get, build our brand back in the UK, and get kind of back with our customers there, and offer what we can to that consumer base, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, we're like, to kind of echo what I was saying earlier on. I sometimes I find it hard to answer those questions, because sometimes it's just happening, and you're like, oh right, okay, I've got to do this thing next and this thing next. And yeah, I mean, we're absolutely delighted with where we're at, and yeah, we'll see what happens next.
How exciting. Well, then in that case, we'll have to have you back, because I have no doubt that this expansion and growth, and as you said, done in the right way, the way the
Yeah.
brand is growing right now, is so exciting. And I also can't wait to see this new collection. So watch this space, everyone. But look, if you've enjoyed today's podcast episode, Please do like and share it. Remember, you can listen back to past Retail Tea Break episodes on your favorite podcast platform or, of course, on YouTube. And then connect with myself and Sarah on LinkedIn. And obviously, check out the website, the collections on Instagram. And I'll pop all the links in the show notes, of course, so you can have a good old nosy and buy, of course, which we know is so important, whether that's online from the brand or, of course, from one of their amazing retailers. So all those details will be in the show notes, and the show notes can, of course, be found on the retailadvisor.ie. Oh, Sarah, what a joyous conversation today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Melissa. I've really loved it. I was a little bit nervous, but thank you.